Portal 2 is widely considered to be one of the greatest sequels in all of gaming, with a lot of people outright calling it one of the greatest games of all time. After the shocking success of Portal, Valve quickly realized that they had a banger of a new IP that needed to be expanded upon pronto. Shortly after the game released, they shifted a massive chunk of their assets and employees onto the development of the sequel. The first game only had a team of 7 or 8 people, while the second game had a team of 30 to 40. They pulled out all the stops to make sure that Portal 2 would be the best it could possibly be. More gameplay mechanics, longer and more complex puzzles, more story, a longer campaign, more characters, more lore and backstory! Portal was just the experiment. Portal 2 is the entire laboratory. As the game boots up, you wake up in some sort of hotel room, which is a far cry from the simple glass cube you woke up in the first game. You immediately get told by some sort of announcer voice, a male one this time, that you're a test subject for Aperture Science, and that you've been awoken for a routine physical check. If you played the first game, you might immediately start to ask yourself questions. Why does this look nothing like the first game? Who's this new voice? Who am I playing as if Chell escaped the facility in the last game? What happened to Aperture Science, and why does it look so much more homely and inviting? These questions might not linger for too long though, since you're immediately told to return to your bed after a brief control tutorial. Once you do, you wake up again to find the place completely dilapidated. The announcer tells you that you've been in suspension for so long that his voice starts to glitch out and repeat 9 over and over before he can say how long you've been under.
You have been in suspension for
9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9.
Basically, you were in suspension for so long that the facility fell apart all around you while you were asleep. Shortly after you're woken up, you get greeted by a brand new character, a personality core named Wheatley, voiced by Stephen Merchant. It's here that you might notice the major art style overhaul, since he's the first thing you've seen that would be familiar from the previous game. In the original game, the personality cores pretty much just looked like beach balls. In this game, they actually went the extra mile and modeled and animated all of the core's motors and hydraulics and stuff, giving them a much more realistic look. The game as a whole is going for a much more realistic look compared to the first game, and I personally think it works wonders in the sequel's favor. This is a scientific facility after all, and science is based in reality. Therefore, it makes a lot more sense for a scientific facility to look realistic. This game's story also takes itself a lot more seriously than in the first game, so the more realistic art direction also fits that tonal difference too. Anyway, tangent aside, Wheatley explains to you that you're the only test subject left alive after the reserve power ran out, and he tells you that in that classic dark humor that the Portal series is known for.
Okay, look, I wasn't going to mention this to you, but I'm in pretty hot water here. The reserve power ran out, so of course the whole relaxation centre stops waking up the bloody test subjects. And of course, nobody tells me anything. No, why should you tell me anything? Why should I be kept informed? You know, about the life functions of the 10,000 bloody test subjects I'm supposed to be in charge of. And whose fault do you think it's going to be when the management comes down here and finds 10,000 flipping vegetables? If anyone asks, and no one's going to ask, don't worry, but if anyone asks, tell them as far as you know, the last time you checked, everyone looked pretty much alive. Alright? Not dead.
Then he rams your hotel room into a wall and tells you to go through one of the old testing tracks to find a portal gun to help you escape. Once the wall is properly rammed down, you drop down into a big glass cube, the very same big glass cube from the start of the first game. Finally, something familiar to people who played the first game. It's not exactly the same though. If you look around, it becomes very obvious that Aperture Science is not what it used to be. Literally everything is in ruins. Now, I love the aesthetic of ruins. I love the feeling of being around something long forgotten and wondering what it was like when people were around. This game nails that feeling perfectly through both the art direction and the soundtracks that play through these ruined test chambers. The announcer from before tells you that he will guide you through the test chambers through a series of pre-recorded messages. Pre-recorded messages are kind of a big running gag in this game, so keep that in mind. As of right now though, he's essentially serving as GLaDOS' replacement through this section of the game. The first portal opens, and you go on your merry way. Some of the earlier puzzles are ripped straight from the first game, which, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. In fact, this game carries over the teach the player slowly mentality that the first game had so strongly, and it does it even better! With the increased game length, they were able to introduce mechanics to you much more gradually. By the way, this game keeps introducing new mechanics to you pretty much all the way up to the climax, so yeah, get used to learning how to do new stuff. So fast forwarding a bit, you get the blue portal gun, do some more puzzles with it, then Wheatley guides you through some hidden employee catwalks, up until you reach a very familiar room, GLaDOS' chamber. Everything from the end of the first game is here. The observation room and hallway before the chamber, the platform that surrounded GLaDOS, the incinerator that you threw the cores down, it's all here, all torn to shreds and decayed into ruins, overrun with plant life. This is where the realization might kick in. You caused this when you destroyed GLaDOS at the end of the first game. You're the reason Aperture is in ruins now. Once GLaDOS was destroyed, the facility didn't last long at all without her. And it's all your fault. This is another way you can tell when this game takes place in relation to the first game. This is all long after. Probably well over a century given the state of the facility. It's been so long that Wheatley doesn't even know the whole story. He tells you that a human took down GLaDOS, but he refers to this human as him, which means that he doesn't know that it was a woman.
Do you know who ended up taking her down in the end? You're not going to believe this. A human. I know, I wouldn't have believed either. Apparently this human escaped and nobody's seen him since.
This is a subtle foreshadowing of what's to come next. Fast forwarding a bit more, you and Wheatley end up in a giant breaker room directly beneath GLaDOS' chamber. Then, Wheatley accidentally flips all of the breaker switches. This causes GLaDOS to reboot and rebuild herself, and all you and Wheatley can do is stand there and helplessly watch it happen. When GLaDOS wakes up, she immediately recognizes the player as the same player from the first game, much to Wheatley's surprise.
Oh, it's you.
You know her?
It's been a long time. How have you been? I've been really busy being dead. You know, after you murdered me.
You did what?
This confirms that you are indeed still playing as Chell, and Wheatley had no idea that it was you who destroyed GLaDOS originally. GLaDOS calls you a murderer, then she throws you down the same incinerator that you used to defeat her. A great bit of poetic justice from her perspective. So you navigate the incinerator, which miraculously has multiple places to stand, until you find the dual portal gun. Once you get that, you go through a maze of ruins that connects to the incinerator, all while GLaDOS talks to you about how petty she is that you murdered her, and how much fun she's going to have torturing you with Tess as revenge.
Do you know the biggest lesson I learned from what you did? In the event of a catastrophic failure, the last 2 minutes of my life were preserved for analysis. I was able, well, forced really, to relive you killing me again and again, forever. You know, if you'd done that to somebody else, they might devote their existence to exacting revenge. Luckily, I'm a bigger person than that. I'm happy to put this all behind us and get back to work. After all, we've got a lot to do, and only 60 more years to do it. So there's nothing to stop us from testing for the rest of your life.
At the end of the maze, just before the elevator, if you turn around, you might notice an interesting Easter egg. This maze of ruins connected to the incinerator is actually Chamber 19 from the first game, just completely dilapidated. This is one of many amazing world-building Easter eggs scattered throughout this game, and it's one of my personal favorites since it makes so much sense. Chamber 19 ended with an incinerator, so of course it connects to the main incinerator room for the whole facility. Okay, anyway, world-building Easter eggs aside, you now have a new course of 22 chambers to navigate, just like in the first game. GLaDOS taunts you all throughout these chambers, talking about how Chell's parents abandoned her.
If it makes you feel any better, science has now validated your birth mother's decision to abandon you on a doorstep.
Calling her fat all the time.
Congratulations. Not on the test. Most people emerge from suspension terribly undernourished. I want to congratulate you on beating the odds and somehow managing to pack on a few pounds.
And generally calling her a terrible person.
Here come the test results. You are a horrible person. That's what it says. a horrible person. We weren't even testing for that.
GLaDOS is a huge jerk through this part of the game. So through this section of the game, you learn how to use the new laser mechanic, replacing the energy pellets from the first game, as well as the new hard light bridges, and the new aerial faith plates. And yes, I am completely confident that the lasers were a replacement for the energy pellets, since the first laser puzzle is identical to the first energy pellet puzzle. Also, if you look quickly enough, you'll see the energy pellet creator from the first game being raised into the ceiling to get replaced by the laser creator. That's another nice little world-building Easter egg that connects the two games. Valve didn't need to include that detail since that was modeling and texturing work that went into a useless environment detail, but the fact that they did just proves how much they cared about connecting the two games together, despite the overhauled art style. Anyway, the laser itself works probably just about as you'd expect. The laser needs to go from the place it's created into a receptacle somewhere else in the room, again, just like the energy pellets. Unlike the energy pellets, however, you also get a new item that goes with the lasers, Discouragement Redirection Cubes. If a laser touches this new cube, it will change direction and go out of a specific face. This face is also the exact direction the player is facing whenever they hold the cube, so that helps with aiming the lasers where necessary. As for the hard light bridges, well, they're bridges. They extend indefinitely until they hit a wall. They can also go through portals. They're a really fun and unique mechanic that can only work in the world of Portal. Finally, there's the aerial faith plates. If you or some object ends up on top of one, that entity will be yeeted in a specific direction. They are really exhilarating to use. So anyway, after solving puzzles aplenty with these new mechanics, when you're on chamber 21 of 22, Wheatley appears out of nowhere and breaks you out of the chambers, guiding you through the facility to help you escape GLaDOS' clutches. After escaping, you and Wheatley then explore the now rebuilt facility to disrupt GLaDOS' two most deadly assets, the turrets and the neurotoxin. Along the way, you can find more world-building Easter eggs, like posters and rooms with specified functions. My personal favorite is the poster in front of the neurotoxin generator. I'm just gonna let this sit here for a minute. Anyway, you make the turret assembly line create nothing but harmless defective turrets, then you destroy the neurotoxin generator, then you go confront GLaDOS. Some banter is exchanged, then the announcer reveals that Wheatley can replace GLaDOS with just the push of a button.
Warning, central core is 80% corrupt.
That's funny. I don't feel corrupt. In fact, I feel pretty good.
Alternate core detected.
Oh, that's me they're talking about.
To initiate a core transfer, please deposit substitute core in receptacle.
You do so, then Wheatley ends up in charge of the entire facility. He starts to let you leave, then an absolutely heartbreaking plot twist happens. Wheatley goes power mad. The core corrupts him, and he changes his mind about letting you go. He starts to become delusional to the point where he starts to think that this was all his doing. When GLaDOS, now laying helpless on the floor, corrects him, he drags her down under the floor and puts her consciousness into a potato battery. Get ready, because this next bit is a huge exposition dump. So, Wheatley is a personality core, right? Before this game, we had only seen personality cores attached to GLaDOS, altering her behavior. Well, as it turns out, there were more cores than just the 4 we knocked off of GLaDOS in the first game. All throughout GLaDOS' life as the head of Aperture Science, the scientists had tried a wide variety of personality cores on her. One core in particular was an intelligence dampening core, designed to generate nothing but bad ideas.
Sorry, what?
The engineers tried everything to make me behave, to slow me down. Once, they even attached an intelligence dampening sphere on me. It clung to my brain like a tumor, generating an endless stream of terrible ideas.
No, not listening, not listening.
It was your voice.
No, you're lying, you're lying.
You're the tumor. You're not just a regular moron. You're designed to be a moron.
I am not a moron!
Yes, you are. You're the moron they built to make me an idiot.
This core was none other than Wheatley. Wheatley's been a bit of a bumbling idiot throughout this game up to this point, and now this explains why. Anyway, Wheatley gets mad when GLaDOS calls him a moron, so then he slams GLaDOS into the elevator with you, Then he slams the elevator down to the shaft, into my absolute favorite part of the game. So you land, and you find yourself in the middle of even more ruins that were apparently buried below Aperture Science. These ruins are far more dilapidated and destroyed than the ruins seen at the start of the game. As you navigate these newer ruins, coming across a bunch of "Keep Out" and "Condemned" signs, you quickly learn that this is none other than the ruins of an older version of Aperture Science, known by the fans as simply Old Aperture. Real creative, I know. It's here where you're introduced to the last two characters vital to the story, Cave Johnson and his assistant Carolyn. Spelled Caroline, but pronounced Carolyn. No idea how that happened. You don't actually meet Cave and Carolyn, however. No, they're long dead, alongside the rest of Old Aperture. Instead, you hear their voices through a series of pre-recorded messages.
There's 1,000 tests performed every day here in our enrichment spheres. I can't personally oversee every one of them, so these pre-recorded messages will cover any questions you might have and respond to any incidents that may occur in the course of your science adventure.
Remember earlier when I said pre-recorded messages were a big running gag in this game? This is why. Cave Johnson is voiced by none other than the man, the myth, the legend, J.K. Simmons. And he has some of the greatest one-liners in all of gaming history.
This first test involves something the lab boys call repulsion gel. You're not part of the control group, by the way. You get the gel. Last poor son of a gun got blue paint. All joking aside, that did happen. Broke every bone in his legs. Tragic, but informative. Or so I'm told. Oh, in case you got covered in that repulsion gel, here's some advice the lab boys gave me. Do not get covered in the repulsion gel. We haven't entirely nailed down what element it is yet, but I'll tell you this, it's a lively one, and it does not like the human skeleton. I'm telling them, keep your pants on. All right, this next test may involve trace amounts of time travel. So, word of advice, if you meet yourself on the testing track, don't make eye contact. Lab boys tell me that'll wipe out time. Entirely. Forward and backward. So, do both of yourselves a favor and just let that handsome devil go about his business.
Legitimately, he is the absolute embodiment of the dark humor that the Portal series is known for. He's also proof that Aperture Science didn't start its inhumane practices with GLaDOS. No, they go all the way back to the source.
Those of you who volunteered to be injected with praying mantis DNA, I've got some good news and some bad news. Bad news is we're postponing those tests indefinitely. Good news is we've got a much better test for you. Fighting an army of mantis men. Pick up a rifle and follow the yellow line. You'll know when the test starts. If you've cut yourself at all in the course of these tests, you might have noticed that your blood is pure gasoline. That's normal. We've been shooting you with an invisible laser that's supposed to turn blood into gasoline, so all that means is it's working. Just a heads up, that coffee we gave you earlier had fluorescent calcium in it so we can track the neuronal activity in your brain. There's a slight chance the calcium could harden and vitrify your frontal lobe. Anyway, don't stress yourself thinking about it. I'm serious. Visualizing the scenario while under stress actually triggers the reaction. Science isn't about why, it's about why not. Why is so much of our science dangerous? Why not marry safe science if you love it so much? In fact, why not invent a special safety door that won't hit you on the butt on the way out, because you are fired? Not you, test subject. You're doing fine. Yes, you. Box your stuff. Out the front door. Parking lot. Car. Goodbye.
Anyone else think Cave Johnson would make a good fit as a scientist for Team Flare? Anyway, to continue the exposition dump before I get into the gameplay mechanics introduced down here, Cave Johnson founded Aperture Science sometime in the 60s to compete with Black Mesa. Aperture started out as a well-renowned scientific facility with a ton of government funding, getting the best of the best from their current history as test subjects, astronauts, Olympians, and war heroes, to test the earliest prototypes of the portal gun, as well as some other experiments, one of which comes into gameplay. After losing a good number of them to the highly deadly tests, Aperture started to fall out of government funding in the 70s. But they continued all their operations as normal, now using random hobos they found on the street as test subjects instead. Then, sometime in the 80s, they were really financially struggling, so they started making the regular employees be the test subjects, and Cave himself became deadly ill from one of his experiments. Then, after Cave died from his illness, he handed off Aperture to Carolyn, and she somehow managed to turn it into the high-tech facility we know and love today. Also, the world building down here is as strong as ever. All throughout the ruined facility, you can find posters that hint at the development of a lot of the gameplay mechanics you see throughout this game, and also Aperture's development as a company too. Each chamber you go through has the year it was made marked on the outside, so that's how we have a good outline of the 60s to the 80s. Overall, if you have a keen eye, you can easily piece together all the nuances of Aperture's backstory that I just glossed over while you're down here. It's some really interesting stuff. I mean, come on, you can even find the dock for the Borealis if you know where to look. There's some Half-Life connection if you were skeptical before about these series being connected. Okay, anyway, on to the gameplay mechanics. These chapters introduce the gels, my favorite gameplay mechanic to come out of this series. In the 60s chambers, you encounter the blue repulsion gel, which makes whatever surface it coats bouncy. In the 70s chambers, you encounter the orange propulsion gel, which makes you go fast when you walk on it. This one is primarily used for yeeting yourself off of ramps. Finally, in the 80s chambers, you encounter the white conversion gel, which gives any surface it coats the ability to have a portal placed on it. I know I just summarized these three gels down to their absolute basics, but my gosh, they add so much to this game when used in tandem with each other. So continuing with the story, as you solve the puzzles found in old Aperture, you're slowly climbing your way back up to modern day Aperture. Eventually, you find Potato GLaDOS, who you got separated from right after the fall thanks to a hungry bird, and you form an unlikely alliance with her to take down Wheatley and save the facility. At the end of old Aperture, you press a button that connects the gel tubes up to modern Aperture, allowing the gels to be used in the puzzles to come. You find your way back up, and you eventually confront Wheatley. Wheatley then sends you and GLaDOS through another new series of tests. Since Wheatley is an idiot, however, they start out stupidly simple. Then, Wheatley finds some of GLaDOS's tests and sends you through them instead, bringing the difficulty back up. This is also where you're introduced to the last puzzle mechanic of the game, the anti-gravity funnels. These funnels will carry whatever goes into them, be it you, test items, and even gels, until they reach a wall, similar to the hardlight bridges seen earlier in the game. So after using one or two of GLaDOS's tests, Wheatley starts to try his hand at making his own tests again. And these tests are some of the hardest in the game, which is to be expected since we are near the end of the game after all. These tests aren't the hardest because Wheatley suddenly mastered the art of test making, however. No, these tests are the hardest because Wheatley Frankenstein monstered them together with no rhyme or reason. Remember, Wheatley is designed to be an idiot who only comes up with bad ideas that are destined to fail. I love how you can actually see where the chambers were jammed together or torn apart to form these new Frankenstein levels. Of course, they are solvable. This is a video game after all. It needs progression to be possible, but still. Speaking of Wheatley making nothing but bad decisions, you and GLaDOS quickly come to the realization that Wheatley has decided to turn off all of Aperture's safety devices, making the entire facility start to self-destruct. And this isn't just something that's told to you, no, it actually affects gameplay, both directly and indirectly. You can see fires forming in the backgrounds of a lot of these Frankenstein tests, and there are times where Wheatley will accidentally move something in your path. As Wheatley's Frankenstein levels continue, you start to see more of Aperture's background assets like walkways and item tubes randomly sticking through the walls of the chambers. Aperture is starting to fall apart again, quickly this time, and you can feel it. Eventually, Wheatley guides you into a death trap, revealing that he doesn't need you anymore. He found the co-op robots, so now he can use them as test subjects instead of you. So yeah, I think this is the part where he kills you.
Hello, this is the part where I kill you. Had a bit of a brainwave.
So after escaping the death trap, you navigate your way through even more, significantly less elaborate death traps. Eventually, you find the last new mechanic in the game, the bombs. This isn't a puzzle mechanic, it's something used solely during the build-up to the final boss and during the boss itself. If you line up your portal with the source of the bombs, you can yeet them through the portals to blow stuff up. Most notably, the gel tubes to spill the gels for your use outside of the puzzles. As you and GLaDOS continue to evade the death traps, you eventually stumble upon a pile of corrupted personality cores directly beneath Wheatley's chamber. Then, in some nice parallel symbolism to the start of the game, you and GLaDOS go up the elevator that leads to the central chamber. The same elevator that was used to accidentally wake up GLaDOS at the start of the game. You confront Wheatley, and the final battle begins. Wheatley throws bombs at you, and you need to use your portals to throw them back at him. In an interesting reversal of the first game's final boss, each time he gets stunned by a bomb, you need to grab one of the corrupted cores and put it on him, with the help of the gels. After you put on 3 of the corrupted cores, another central core transfer can be accomplished. You go press the button, GLaDOS gets put back in charge, and the day is saved. As a way of showing thanks for helping her save the facility, GLaDOS, now out of her potato prison, lets you leave in a surprisingly bittersweet ending. You ride the elevator up, it stops at a door, it opens, and you're greeted by a group of turrets, all with their guns pointed at you. That's it. Game over. Chell's dead. Okay, that's not exactly what happens. I'm not going to show you what really does happen, though, because it's genuinely one of the greatest ending cutscenes I've ever seen in any game, ever. It needs to be experienced firsthand. And that was Portal 2! As I said earlier, not only is it one of the greatest sequels of all time, but many consider it to be one of the greatest games of all time outright. It's for sure one of my favorites. It improved and perfected the unique mechanics of the portals seen in the first game, and all the new gameplay mechanics and gimmicks are some of the most creative and fun mechanics I've ever seen in a puzzle game. The backstory and characters it adds, and the story in general, really help expand Aperture beyond just being the setting for another puzzle game. And overall, this game is amazing at immersing you into its world. This one is also only $10 in the Steam store, and I think it's even more worth it than Portal 1 was. However you can, get your hands on this game. It is definitely a must-play. That being said, I'm still not done. Ayo, future me!
Yo, what's up?
Wanna play some Portal 2 co-op?
Sure, I love Portal 2's co-op. Though, if you ask me, the one in Portal 3 is way better.
What? Did you just say Portal 3? There's a Portal 3 in the future?
Ha! Gotcha!
Oh, ha ha, very funny. Way to ruin my hopes and dreams, dude.
Come on, my guy. This is Valve we're talking about here. They don't know how to count to 3.
Noted. Anyway, you want to play or not?
Sure. I'll even help finish up the review if you want.
I don't see why not. So anyway, the co-op mode takes place a short time after the events of the single-player mode. You and a friend take control of 2 robots, Atlas and Peabody. Atlas is the blue one, and he shoots blue and purple portals. Peabody is the orange one, and he shoots orange and red portals. Don't worry, it doesn't matter which robot you control, they play identically. Also, unlike the main game, blue doesn't connect to orange. Blue connects to purple, and orange connects to red, which makes the players completely in control of how their own portals work.
In this mode, you and your co-op partner need to navigate a series of short courses, with each course emphasizing a different puzzle mechanic. Most of these mechanics are ripped straight out of the single-player mode though, so if you've already played it, there's not much new to see.
In fact, the co-op as a whole has a very similar teach the player slowly mentality that the base game has. It was designed to be accessible to both new and veteran players alike. New players will be experiencing these new mechanics for the first time, while veterans need to learn how to use these mechanics in tandem with another player.
The first course is just to get the player used to the cooperative gameplay. The second is mass and velocity, or in other words, the place where you use the unique physics of the portals. The third is all about the hard light bridges, the fourth is for the anti-gravity funnels, and the fifth is for the gels.
And if you feel like that's not enough, there is also a post-game course for players who want more.
If you want more of the single player's fantastic story, well, you're not gonna find it here. There is a story, but it's not nearly as in-depth as the single-player story.
Yeah, it's mostly just stuff about how GLaDOS misses testing with humans because she misses the fact that she can kill them so easily. Whenever one of the co-op robots dies, they just get rebuilt almost instantly. The irony of that is that there's a subplot about how the robots are developing to have much more human-like mannerisms and personalities. There are a few times where, when you finish a level, Atlas and Peabody will perform a new personality-filled gesture, to which GLaDOS will respond with resentment.
That arc does have a conclusion, though. I don't want to spoil what it is, though, since it does lead to a great ending, similar to the single-player story.
Anyway, as for the new mechanics introduced in the co-op, well, as I said before, there's not much. The only thing I can think of offhand is that there are specially shaped ground buttons that you need to place specific items into, rather than just being able to step on them like in the single-player campaign. They probably did that to keep players from cheesing the stages by just pressing the buttons easily and letting the other player through whatever door they unlock.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, let's talk about the whole edgeless safety cube thing.
Oh yeah, that's another funny quirk about this mode. One of the items that can be placed into a specially shaped button is an item called the Edgeless Safety Cube. Now, you might think this means a cube that had its corners rounded off, and you'd be partially right.
It's a sphere. It is literally a sphere. Not even close to a cube.
Yeah. Just goes to show that Aperture might not always know what they're doing when it comes to science, when they call a sphere an edgeless safety cube. But hey, the way I see it, it's just a fun bit of absurdist humor that adds to the charm of the game.
Regardless of the lack of new mechanics, though, it is still very much worth your time. If you love the gameplay of the first two games, you'll love the co-op as well.
Alright, I think that about wraps everything up. I'll take it from here. See you later!
Wait, what? Oh! Where'd you even get a portal gun?
And that was Portal 2! Not only is it one of the greatest sequels of all time, but it's one of the greatest games of all time outright. Between the fantastic gameplay mechanics, the fun and charming characters, the mind-bending puzzles, and the fantastic world building, this is definitely an experience you won't want to miss out on. As I said before, it's only $10 in the Steam store. This game is easily accessible to nearly anybody. For a final conclusion, this game is a must-play for sure. Pick it up however you can.